You say Andy Dufresne is not the protagonist in The Shawshank Redemption?
That's correct. Technically, the helpful way to think about the protagonist is the one who changes the most and has the most agency and impact on the change. So in that story, Andy for sure drives the narrative. I mean, he is a freight train of hope all the way through that movie. He hopes right in the beginning, he hopes in the middle, and he hopes at the end. And he has a little bit of a doubt here and there, but for the most part, he's nonstop hope. He dug himself out of that damn prison with like a spoon or something, ridiculous, or I guess a rock hammer. Red, the Morgan Freeman character, is, it's not just that he's narrating, but it's also significant that he's narrating because he starts in despair and he says, and they get to the middle and he's kind of picking up that this guy Andy, and they've already been there 15 years at that point, but picking up, this guy Andy is all about hope. And he goes, hope? You can't hope in here. It'll get you killed in here, right? And that's that part of us that considers hope versus despair. And that movie represents, Red in that movie is the protagonist, and he represents how part of us can realize that when we choose hope in no matter what situation, especially when it's really bleak, like it is in that film, we actually liberate ourselves and we free ourselves to the point where there's a character named Brooks, and I really like that name, Brooks, where he gets out and the old guy is so, accustomed to the other people, and he kind of is sort of a happy-go-lucky character, but like he doesn't have enough hope and optimism to be able to sort of rebuild his life. And so he turns right back to despair and ends up killing himself. Really beautiful turn, again, counterpoint to this idea of hope versus despair. But no, for sure, I would analyze that movie with Morgan Freeman's character, Red, being the protagonist. And one more thing about that story is that when they, I believe the way the book ends, which is really wonderful, it ends with Morgan Freeman, or not Morgan Freeman, the Red character in the book, just saying, I hope, I hope. He's basically learned to hope, and you don't know if he ever sees Andy. And to me, that is sort of a deeper, more resonant lesson that, like, it's easy to hope if you know you're going to get it. The rub is, can you hope? Can you believe? Can you be open when you haven't gotten it yet? When you don't know if you're ever going to get it? And when Red learns to do that, even though he hasn't gotten a reconnection with Andy, to me, that really hits hard. So I believe they did that in the actual movie version, and people were pissed off. They didn't like it. So they reshot the ending where they actually reunite, and people loved it. So, we're in service to the audience, and I think the audience loved seeing hope be overtly rewarded. To them, it landed more deeply.
So when Stephen King wrote the book, it was a novella, was it? Okay.
It's part of a wonderful novella called Different Seasons. Stand By Me, that movie was a great story called The Body. That's kind of like the Rob Reiner film, but a little darker and more interesting. So that, and then Apt Pupil is another one. There's like 4 stories, and I think 3 out of the 4 were made into movies.
Wow. And I understand that you said something about, because you did a video on your YouTube channel about how the law of attraction powers the Shawshank Redemption, and we can put a link to it below here, our video. But you feel that maybe the title of the movie hurt its success in the initial release?
Yeah, for sure, in my opinion. And one of my writing partners is one of the top marketing minds in Hollywood. So it doesn't mean that I'm always wrong or he's a little bit, like, he's good, so I have a pretty good feel for marketing stuff. And my opinion is that when you have an unusual title, like, what the hell does that even mean, Shawshank Redemption? Everybody knows what redemption means, but nobody knows what the job of marketing is you're beginning to tell the story. You never want to confuse people. You can intrigue them. And I think that's why they justify a title like that, is that it's intriguing in a way. And in this case, it was built on IP that maybe people were familiar with. And so they were kind of, letting it go. But like the marketing campaign and the title you choose is the beginning of telling the story. And the better way to tell the story is clear. This is what my story is. It's a story about this or that, So that's ideal. But, sometimes, the Coen brothers always have kind of funky sounding titles. But like, the Coen brothers movies get sold because of mostly them and their brand and their sort of style, their superpower. So, there's certainly exceptions to the rule. But I think if you take Shawshank Redemption and you give it a different title, it makes a much bigger splash earlier on. I mean, it made a big splash later because of the reaction, but I think there are much better titles than that.
And I think the book like Ava Gardner or something?
Rita Hayworth.
Rita Hayworth, sorry, the other actress, okay, yeah, and then the Shawshank or something.
Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Interesting.
Which is fine for a novella, I guess. I don't know anything about book marketing. Maybe no difference at all there. But in movie marketing, there's so much noise. You absolutely will get a bigger audience when you have a great title and it cuts right through the noise in a way that totally beautifully positions the audience for the rest of the story. And it's the beginning of the story that you tell. So like a knife, you want it cutting through the noise.
When you broke down the Shawshank Redemption in your video, you talked about letting go of outcomes and not being attached. If we think of a writer, how should they let go of outcomes, or maybe they shouldn't? Maybe that's something that's not, they shouldn't never be too free-flowing with letting something go.
Well, they should always let go. Should they be completely free-flowing? Pretty much, but not so like loosey-goosey where you just kind of wander around aimlessly, right? There's what we want for sort of to cross our next career milestone as quickly as possible. We want to have a clear sense of where we're going and conviction towards it, and a joy and an ease and a lack of attachment. And we don't, ultimately, it's about that process of getting there. It's like the way I talk about it sometimes is that it's a treadmill. You're jogging on the treadmill and it's a beautiful treadmill. And once you get to one milestone, guess what? There's just another milestone. And then once you get to that second milestone, guess what? There's another milestone, right? So you're already on the damn treadmill. So this idea of I'm going to break in, well, you write a screenplay today, you've already broken in, essentially. Are you getting paid for it yet? No. But the paradox is the less attached to it and the more you're there just to serve your audience as powerfully as you can, the quicker you'll cross the milestones that get you to the point where they're paying you lots of money.
You also broke down in your video victim energy when it comes to the law of attraction and attracting sort of victim circumstances versus empowerment energy.
That's right.
How do screenwriters do that?
Oh, wow. You ever heard of this thing called Twitter? Actually, you see both on Twitter. Really wonderful, positive, powerful energy, and lots of victim choices. I can't make it into Hollywood because of this excuse. I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too the other. They don't get me. Woe is me. I have no power. It's really a fascinating choice, that habit that people have of giving away the power, giving away the power, giving away the power, when we have the choice to do the opposite. I'll take the power. I'll take it. I'm responsible. I can choose. Yes, Hollywood has bias. Yes, some groups are more favored than other groups. Yes, 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 it's all true, and you can succeed despite that. How? You go apples to apples. You're trying to do this. You're seeing what's already out there with this. You figure out a way to close that gap. You position yourself as the best person to do the next, thing in this genre. The person who's going to write horror in a new way, or this in a new way, or that in a new way. And if you do that, they don't care what you look like, where you came from at all. You need to deliver the goods. And in fact, if you are related to a celebrity or a studio head or whatever, and that door is wide open for you, if you don't have the goods, you're not going to get work either. This idea that nepotism is what fuels all these things, it's BS. I mean, it's a factor, but it's this much of a factor. What's really a factor is delivering the goods. And if you got the goods, they don't care where you came from. They don't care who you are, any type. If you've got the goods, they'll be happy to work with you and they'll try to sell you. And if you have all the connections in the world and you're not delivering the goods, guess where you go? Director jail, writer jail, you get nothing. And that's exactly what happens there. And these ideas that Hollywood's this closed place is BS because of director jail. You know what I mean? It's like, you gotta put up. What's true is that you're only as good as your last picture, that sort of thing. I mean, that's a negative way to spin it, but that's the truth. I mean, it's like, the internet makes pretty much anybody you want to get to accessible, one way or another. Not everybody, but like most of the people, or if not them directly, probably people they know. And if you impress them, but the truth of it is, people just aren't developed enough in their craft to do something that's impressive enough to get to people who can get to people to get it moving, and then instead of just going, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on the way, I'm learning, whatever, they go, oh, Hollywood's closed. People, they don't like my type because of this or that. And again, there is bias. I'm not saying there isn't, but it's a tiny part. And when you focus on the bias, you are giving your power away, you are leaking it, and you are distracting yourself from your greatness, and you're just out of alignment from your deeper goal, which is to be in service of your audience, which is all about coming from your power and being there and helping them.
And in the Shawshank Redemption, some of the character arcs went from victim attracting victim-like situations, to reversals of that with, let's say, the prison warden. Mm-hmm. So he was maybe more empowered at one point, and then because of some things that he did, then it took a reverse turn, whereas with Red, it was... So different character arcs happen? I mean, how much should we be thinking about things like that, the law of attraction, in relation to our characters? What are they attracting? Well,
we shouldn't think about the law of attraction at all unless we like it, unless it speaks to us, unless we see real value in it. There's aspects of the way people talk about the law of attraction that are really sort of off-putting to a lot of people. And for good reason. And if your curiosity stops there, then you shouldn't be thinking about it. It's been significantly beneficial for me and for other people I've seen put it into practice. Things happen and it feels good and it's fun and it's easier and it works. That's my experience. People should have their own experience and see if it works for them. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. For Shawshank Redemption, in terms of the victim energy, the first thing that came to my mind was that character that cracked that first night. So Andy Dufresne comes in, and then that heavier character he cracks. He's the one that he gets so overwhelmed with his fear that he ends up crying, and I think then the guard actually comes in and then beats him down, and then he dies because of his wounds. So, and that looked at from a law of attraction perspective was like he brought that on himself. He was so deeply in the habit of giving away his power, not being able to feel the terror that he felt being in this new place, that he spiraled to a place where he made things worse, and he made things worse, and he made things worse. To the point where he actually killed him, right? And we all do that sometimes, and we all have the power to do that a little bit less and a little bit less. And when we do it a little bit less so often that we actually almost never do it, we just hold our power and we come from our power more often. Your example about the warden is really interesting. So he starts out clearly with lots of power, and then comes to a point where, but he's completely corrupt. So he's doing it. He's not using his power in service of his people. So Why? What's going on beneath that? Ultimately, he's got the material power, he's in charge, but he's not in alignment. He's a victim. And he's a victim even though he's technically in charge, and he's coming from that victim place as a tyrannical leader. Because the tyrannical leader is not in service of his or her people. They are coming from their victim energy. So when he falls at the end, it is still saying the same theme, that it's always better to find hope. And despair and victim energy will always cycle you down to terrible places. Even if you are, and that's the connection between the two characters, is that you have the warden who started out very powerful, but basically was in this energy of victim and lack, and I didn't believe in genuinely serving people, so he had to cheat and steal and lie, and it basically drove him into a place of despair. And that character that came in as the fresh fish, the guy that cracked under the pressure, was the same thing, but his demise happened so quickly because he started from a place of less power. But they both are thematically proving the thematic statement of that piece, that when we hope, we get good things. When we despair, we get bad things. Or from law of attraction language, when we are open to our power, or we can start with the negative part, when we are sort of bringing in victim energy or lack energy or that sort of thing, it leads to despair. When we bring in our power and our flow and our ease and our belief and our hope and our patience, it leads to triumph.
So just the way people sort of use the hero's journey,
Yeah,
as a backdrop against their story. If someone is open to the law of attraction and whatever woo-woo parts scare maybe some people, others are open to, what templates can they apply to their story with the law of attraction?
Geez, I don't know if I would call it a template. It's like, my understanding of the law of attraction, there's been, people talking about this probably for thousands of years in one way or another. But in the 20th century, there was some, people writing about it sort of the turn of the century. And then in the last, 20, 30 years, there's been other people writing books about it. There was that movie, The Secret, that was, touching on it. And, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's more of it's the tool that screenwriters can take from it is more of a mindset approach. It's like, look, the doors are going to close in your career for sure. How do you want to respond to that? In a way where you're like, oh no, the door closed, blah, 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 that's terrible. Oh, I didn't get into this, screenplay competition, or oh, this person didn't buy my script, or whatever it is. This person's not returning my phone call. You have a choice in how you can respond to that. And when you choose to respond to that from your inner sovereign energy as a king or a queen, saying, I reached out to another kingdom and it didn't work out, fine, I'll reach out to another kingdom, and then I'll reach out to another kingdom, and then I'll reach out, because you know why? That's who I am. I am a king, and I reach out to other kingdoms, and I do business when I find my kindred spirits. And that's just it, because this is a treadmill, and I'm just in it to be here and to do things. And yes, at some point I'll find the right person and we can marry our kingdoms together and do something amazing. And until that point, who cares? Because I'm showing up as me and I'm just doing it.